afternoon, everyone. Ravitesh and Ramya, are you ready with your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First, who is going to present?
I will present, sir. Ravitesh.
Okay. Today's topic is neuromuscular junction anatomy and physiology, as well as myasthenia gravis and LES. What is LES?
Lambert
Lambert Eaton myasthenic syndrome.
First of all, we are going to go into the anatomy and physiology of the neuromuscular junction. Then you will better understand the pathology of myasthenia gravis as well as LES. Okay. To start with, we are going to start with anatomy and physiology. It is being presented by Ravi Teja. You're final year students, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Ravi,
sir.
we have made you a co-host. You can share your screen now. You can start sharing your screen.
Yes, sir. So, can you see my screen, sir?
Yeah. You can start.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to discuss about anatomy and physiology of neuromuscular junction. It is defined as junction between the motor neuron and muscle fiber through which neuron activates the muscle to contract. Parts of neuromuscular junction. It consisting of presynaptic membrane, synaptic cleft, and postsynaptic membrane. All these three together called synapse. Synapse is nothing but junction between two cell membranes through which transmission of information occurs from one cell to the another cell. Neuromuscular junction is also described as chemical synapse because transmission of impulse from nerve ending to the muscle fiber occurs through chemical neurotransmitter. The axon terminal causes invagination in the muscle fiber membrane called synaptic trough or synaptic gutter. This gutter contains numerous muscular folds called subneural clefts. These subneural clefts greatly increases the surface area at which synaptic transmitter can act. Presynaptic membrane. This is the presynaptic membrane and it is a neuronal membrane. Beneath this neuronal membrane, there are dense bars. Beside each dense bars, there are specialized protein channels called voltage-gated calcium channels. The nerve terminal also contains synaptic vesicles, which are formed by Golgi apparatus in the cell body of motor neuron in the spinal cord. These vesicles are then transported by axoplasm to the nerve terminal. It also contains acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter, which is synthesized in the cytosol of nerve terminal. Acetylcholine is formed from choline, which is obtained from extracellular environment, and acetyl-CoA, which is synthesized by mitochondria within the nerve terminal itself. Both these fuse to form acetylcholine with the help of an enzyme known as choline acetyl transferase. Synaptic cleft. It is a gap between presynaptic membrane and postsynaptic membrane. The gap is approximately 30 nanometers in size. It predominantly contains sodium and calcium ions along with acetylcholinesterase enzyme. Postsynaptic membrane. It is a muscle membrane. It contains numerous muscular folds called subneural clefts. These subneural clefts increases the surface area for the action of neurotransmitter to occur. This membrane contains specialized channels called ligand-gated cation channels to which acetylcholine receptors are attached. These acetylcholine receptors are also called nicotinic cholinergic receptors because they act as receptors for both nicotine and acetylcholine. Now let us look at the events at neuromuscular junction. When the action potential passes along the length of the axon and reaches the nerve terminal, the voltage-gated calcium channels at the axon terminal opens. It results in influx of calcium ions from synaptic space to the interior of nerve terminal. With the influx of calcium ion into the nerve terminal, there is activation of calcium calmodulin dependent protein kinase. It causes phosphorylation of synapsin proteins. The synapsin proteins anchors to the acetylcholine vesicles to the cytoskeleton of presynaptic terminal. It causes detachment of vesicles from cytoskeleton and movement to the active zone of presynaptic membrane. These vesicles then fuse with neuronal membrane and empty their acetylcholine into synaptic space by exocytosis. The acetylcholine in the synaptic space binds to the acetylcholine receptors on ligand-gated ion channels, which are present on muscle membrane fiber. This attachment causes opening of ligand-gated ion channels. Here, the
Can you hear me? Raviteja? Your voice is not audible. Raviteja?
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you, your roll number? What is your roll number?
88, sir.
88. Can you share your screen? I think so. The screen has disappeared.
Sir, yes, sir. I started sharing, sir. Can you screen, sir?
Yeah. No. Okay. Continue.
Synapsin proteins anchors. Sorry.
Yeah.
The large influx of large number of sodium ions into the muscle fiber, creating more positive charge. The reason for large influx of sodium ions into the muscle fiber is that there are two reasons. One is there are sodium in extracellular fluid, and the negative inside in muscle fiber. To there is a local positive potential known as created inside muscle fiber. Once the centered potential reaches the threshold value, action potential injected along the muscle membrane in cause muscle contraction. Degradation of acetylcholine once reaches the synaptic phase continues to acetylcholine receptors as long as they persist in the phase. Acetylcholine remains in the synaptic phase for few milliseconds at
Raviteja, can you hear me?
Sir, 1 second, sir. I will change the network, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. Degradation of acetylcholine. The acetylcholine, once released into the synaptic space, continues to activate the acetylcholine receptors as long as the acetylcholine persists in the space. Acetylcholine remains in the synaptic space for few milliseconds at most, which is normally sufficient to excite the muscle fiber. Acetylcholine is degraded by two means. One is after the muscle contraction, the acetylcholine is released back into the synaptic cleft when it is degraded by special enzyme known as acetylcholinesterase into choline and acetate. 50% of choline is recycled back into the nerve terminal for the synthesis of acetylcholine. The second method is small amount of acetylcholine diffuses out of synaptic space and is then no longer available to act on the muscle fiber membrane. The rapid removal of acetylcholine prevents the continued muscle reexcitation after the muscle fiber has removed from its initial action potential. Now let us look at small demonstration. Here the action potential passes along the motor neuron to trigger the skeletal muscle contraction. The action potential passes along the motor neuron to excite the skeletal muscle fiber. The site where the motor neuron excites the skeletal muscle fiber is called neuromuscular junction. The neuromuscular junction consisting of point of contact between axon terminals of the motor neuron and motor end plate of the skeletal muscle fiber. Now let us look at the events at neuromuscular junction. It occurs in 7 coordinated steps. Step 1. In step 1, the action potential passes along the axon and reaches the nerve terminal. When the action potential reaches the nerve terminal, in step 2, there is activation of voltage gated calcium channels, and it results in influx of calcium into the nerve terminal. See, the pink color shown is a calcium entered into the nerve terminal. In step 3, these calcium ions activate specialized proteins and cause exocytosis of the vesicles and release of acetylcholine into the synaptic space. In step 4, this diffused acetylcholine in the synaptic space binds to the acetylcholine receptors present on ligand-gated cation channels. Here, 2 molecules of acetylcholine are required for the activation of these channels. With this attachment, there is a conformational change, and it results in step 6, it results in influx of sodium, which is shown in red color, and efflux of potassium, which is shown in blue color. This large influx of sodium and small amount of potassium efflux causes changes in the membrane potential to become less negative. In step 7, when the membrane potential reaches the threshold value, the action potential that propagates along the muscle sarcolemma and causes muscle contraction. This transmission ceases when acetylcholine is removed from the synaptic space. Acetylcholine is removed from synaptic space by 2 means. One is acetylcholine diffuses away from the synaptic cleft and no longer available for the attachment to the acetylcholine receptors. And the second method is acetylcholine esterase enzyme break down the acetylcholine into acetic acid and choline. This choline is again recycled back into the nerve terminal for the synthesis of acetylcholine, and the cycle repeats. All this anatomy and physiology of neuromuscular junction is required to know how myasthenia gravis occur. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder that causes muscle weakness due to inability of neuromuscular junction to transmit enough signals from nerve fiber to the muscle fiber. And this disease will be further explained by Ramya. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Raviteja,
Yes, sir.
you can stop sharing your screen now.
Okay, sir.
And who is the next speaker?
Ramya, sir.
Okay, you can start sharing your screen. We'll have the doubts and all towards the end of the session.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ramya, you can start sharing your screen.
Sir, is it visible?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis is a neuromuscular junction disorder characterized by weakness and fatigability of the skeletal muscle. Myasthenia gravis is a T cell and a B cell mediated disease. Here, there is a Th2 activation which causes the release of interleukin 4, which in turn activates B cells, and this causes the release of antibodies. The antibodies which are present in myasthenia gravis are anti-acetylcholine receptor antibodies, anti-muscle specific kinase antibodies, and antibodies to low-density lipoprotein receptor related protein. The muscle-specific kinase and low-density lipoprotein receptor related protein are responsible for the maintenance of acetylcholine receptors. So when antibodies are produced against this, it also results in myasthenia gravis. Thymus abnormalities are seen in 75% of cases of anti-acetylcholine receptor antibody positive cases, of which 65% include thymic hyperplasia and 10% are thymomas. Coming to the pathophysiology of the disease, when action potential travels down a motor nerve and reaches the nerve terminal, Acetylcholine is released and it combines with the acetylcholine receptors which are present on the postsynaptic folds. When the acetylcholine combines with this acetylcholine receptor, there is an influx of the sodium which produces depolarization and causes muscle contraction. This acetylcholine is later hydrolyzed by the acetylcholine esterase enzyme which is present within the synaptic folds. So when the antibodies are produced against, it leads to cell-mediated immune assault and the end plate gets simplified. Coming to the mechanism of reduction of acetylcholine receptors at the neuromuscular junction. The antibodies produce cross-link the receptors and there is a turnover of the receptors which results in rapid endocytosis. Damage to the postsynaptic muscle membrane by the antibody with the help of complement. And the antibodies can also block the active site of the acetylcholine receptor. So in the figure A, you can see the acetylcholine. In the figure A, you can see the antibodies along with the complement are resulting in destruction of the morphology of the muscle membrane. Whereas in the figure B, there is the endocytosis of the acetylcholine receptors. In the figure C, there is the blockage of the active site of the acetylcholine receptor. Coming to the incidence of the disease, it is usually of a bimodal peaking. Early onset it is usually seen from second to third decade of the life, and females are more commonly affected when compared to that of the males. In late onset, it is usually seen from 6 to 7 decade of the life, in which both males and females are affected equally. Coming to the progression of the disease, usually the ocular muscles are affected first, which is followed by the pharyngeal muscles, proximal muscles, and later the respiratory muscles are involved. If the weakness remains restricted to the extraocular muscle for a period of 3 years, it is considered to be very rare that it becomes a generalized one, and this is considered to be ocular myasthenia. Coming to the clinical features of the disease, the cardinal feature is considered to be fluctuating weakness and fatigability, which means there is a weakness on repeated activity. For example, in this picture, when the person is asked to look up for a longer duration of time, there is increase in the degree of ptosis of the left eye. Ocular involvement. It includes ptosis along with diplopia. The ptosis is of fluctuating and is of variable degree. It can be unilateral or bilateral, and the diplopia is binocular with sparing of pupils. The earliest muscle involved is medial rectus and Cogan slit which is present. That is, when the patient is asked to look down and then instructed to come back to the normal position, a small twitch is seen. Face. When the person is asked to smile, there will be a snarling expression. As you can see here, when the patient is asked to smile, here a snarling expression is seen. Pharyngeal involvement. It includes dysphagia, dysarthria, nasal regurgitation, and fatigue on chewing. Limb weakness. It is usually proximal and asymmetric. Neck weakness. There is drooped posture. Respiratory muscle involvement occurs in the later stages of the disease. Diagnosis is usually made with the help of history, physical examination, and laboratory investigations. History of ptosis, dysphagia, dysarthria, fatigue on chewing, these can be considered as positive history. Physical examination, evaluation for ptosis, evaluation for the extraocular muscles and subjective diplopia, evaluation for the orbicularis oculi loris, evaluation for the jaw opening and closure, assessment of muscle strength in neck and extremities, weakness following repeated shoulder abduction, and vital capacity measurement if there is any respiratory muscle involvement. Coming to the ice pack test. If the patient has ptosis, when an ice pack is kept on the ptotic eyelid, there is an improvement in the degree of ptosis. This is due to less depletion of the acetylcholine receptor in the cold conditions and reduced activity of the acetylcholine esterase. Here you can see that the person has a ptotic left eyelid. When an ice pack is kept on the left eyelid, there is an improvement in the degree of ptosis. Laboratory testing. In seropositive myasthenia, anti-acetylcholine receptor antibodies are present. This is considered to be the most specific test. In seronegative myasthenia, anti-muscle specific kinase antibodies are present, anti-LPR4 antibodies, antibodies against titin, antibodies against netrin-1 and Caspar-2 are present. Electrodiagnostic testing, which includes repetitive nerve stimulation. This produces a decremental response of more than 10% at 3 Hz frequency. The anti-acetylcholine esterase medication should be stopped 6 to 12 hours before the testing. Single fiber electromyography, there is blocking and jitter. Hydrophonium chloride. This is used for test. Hydrophonium is used for testing because of its rapid onset, 30 seconds, and short duration of action, that is 5 minutes. So initial IV dose of 2 milligrams of hydrophonium is given, and if there is any improvement, it is considered positive and the procedure is stopped. If there is no improvement, then an additional 8 milligrams IV is given, and then look for any improvement. This is usually done in the patients where the clinical findings of myasthenia gravis are present, but they have a negative antibody and negative electrodiagnostic testing. CT or MRA is done to exclude intracranial lesions. Associated disorders. These include disorders of thymus such as thymoma and thymic hyperplasia. Other autoimmune neurological disorders such as chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy and neuromyelitis optica. Certain autoimmune disorders which are associated with the myasthenia gravis are Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Graves' disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and systemic lupus erythematosus. There are certain disorders which exacerbate myasthenia, which include hyper and hypothyroidism. Certain medical treatment also exacerbates myasthenia, which includes aminoglycosides, quinolones, beta blockers. Certain disorders interfere with the therapy of myasthenia gravis, which include TB medication, diabetes, hypertension, and asthma. Differential diagnosis. Um, Congenital myasthenic syndromes. This is usually suspected when the symptoms of myasthenia begin in infancy or childhood, but they can be present in early adulthood also. This is not an autoimmune condition, and it is due to genetic mutations in eta subunit of the acetylcholine receptor or mutations in the genes encoding for rhabsin, COLQ, DOX7. Drug-induced myasthenia. Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome is a presynaptic disorder of the neuromuscular junction. Botulism. This is due to toxins produced by the Clostridium botulism. This is caused by ingestion of improperly cooked food which contains the toxins. The toxins cleave the proteins which are required to release the acetylcholine. So they interfere with the neuromuscular junction and result in weakness which is similar to that of the myasthenia. Neurasthenia. This is a myasthenia like fatigue syndrome without any organic basis. Fatigue here is weakness and the diplopia is because of intracranial lesion. So an MRA can exclude the neurasthenia. Progressive external ophthalmoplegia. This is a mitochondrial disorder which is detected on biopsy. Treatment includes anticholinesterases. As acetylcholinesterase cleave the acetylcholine which is present within the neuromuscular junction, by giving anticholinesterases, we can increase the time of which the acetylcholine can be present at the neuromuscular junction. So pyridostigmine, which is of longer duration of action, 30 to 60 milligrams, 3 to 4 times daily is given. Thymectomy is done and it has shown to improve the condition. Immunosuppression is done with the help of glucocorticoids. In mild to moderate conditions, initial dose of 15 to 25 milligrams per day is given and increase the dose by 5 milligrams per day at 2 to 3 day interval until marked improvement is seen, or reach 50 to 60 milligrams per day. In severe cases, start with a high dose and maintain that dose for a month and then slowly taper the dose. Other immunotherapies which includes mycophenolate mofetil. This is usually given in 1 to 1.5 grams 2 times a day. This is used for long-term treatment of myasthenic patients. Azathioprine. This is associated with certain side effects such as flu-like symptoms, bone marrow suppression, and abnormalities in liver function. So an initial dose is 50 milligrams per day for a week. If this is tolerated, then increase the dose gradually to 2 to 3 milligrams per kg of total body weight. Calcineurin inhibitors. Cyclosporin 4 to 5 milligrams per kg per day. Tacrolimus 0.07 to 0.1 milligrams per kg per day. These calcineurin inhibitors work rapidly when compared to mycophenolate mofetil and azathioprine, but these are usually associated with side effects such as hypertension and nephrotoxicity. Rituximab. This is a monoclonal antibody that binds to the CD20 molecule on the B lymphocytes. This is effective in MuSK antibody positive cases. This is given in a dose of 1 gram IV, 2 occasions, 2 weeks apart. Eculizumab. This is also a monoclonal antibody that binds to the membrane attack complex. This is given IV every 2 weeks. In refractory myasthenia gravis patient, high dose cyclophosphamide is given. Plasmapheresis. Plasma, which has antibodies, is separated from the blood cells and then returned back to the patient. This is done in 5 exchanges, 3 to 4 liters per exchange over a period of 10 to 14 days. This is usually done in cases of short-term reduction in the Antibodies. IVIG. This is given in a dose of 2 grams per kg administered more than 2 to 5 days. Coming to the management of myasthenia gravis in a whole, first establish the diagnosis with the help of history, physical examination, and laboratory investigations. Search for other associated conditions such as thymic hyperplasia and thymoma. If it is ocular only, perform an MRI of the brain and then give anticholinesterases such as pyridostigmine. If it is unsatisfactory, then start the person on immunosuppressive drugs such as steroids, azathioprine. If the condition is generalized, then anticholinesterase is given and then evaluate the patient for thymectomy. If there is a good forced vital capacity, perform thymectomy. If there is a poor risk, that is low forced vital capacity, start the patient on plasmapheresis. After performing thymectomy, evaluate the clinical status and if indicated, go for immunosuppression with drugs such as steroids. In cases of crisis, intensive care plasmapheresis is performed, and if the condition improves, start the person on anticholinesterase. And if the condition does not improve, start the person on immunosuppressive drugs such as steroids. Coming to myasthenic crisis. This is exacerbation of weakness sufficient to endanger the life. This is usually includes respiratory failure. Management includes antibiotics, ventilatory assistance, plasmapheresis, or IVIG. This should be differentiated from cholinergic crisis. Myasthenic crisis is due to insufficient or there is a less dosage of medication. This results in decreased acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction, leading to weakness. If there is any cholinergic crisis, it is due to excessive cholinesterase medication. This results in increased acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction. This increased acetylcholine continuously stimulates the receptor, which results in NM receptor downregulation. So there is a decreased contraction and results in weakness. So the myasthenic crisis should be differentiated from cholinergic crisis. This is done with the help of edrophonium. If the condition improves by giving edrophonium, it is myasthenic crisis, and if the condition further deteriorates, it is considered to be cholinergic crisis. Coming to Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, this is considered to be one of the differential diagnoses of myasthenia gravis. This is a presynaptic disorder of the neuromuscular junction that can cause weakness similar to that of the myasthenia gravis. This is caused by antibodies which are produced against the voltage-gated calcium channels. This is a paraneoplastic syndrome which is associated with small cell carcinoma of the lung. Management of Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome includes 3,4-diaminopyridine. This is a potassium channel blocker which blocks the potassium channel. So there is a prolonged depolarization in the motor nerve terminal, which further increases the acetylcholine. And there will be decreased weakness in the muscle. Pyridostigmine is also given. Plasmapheresis and immunotherapy can be done. These are certain differences between myasthenia gravis and Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune condition. Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome is a paraneoplastic condition which is associated with small cell carcinoma of the lung. Myasthenia gravis is a postsynaptic pathology, whereas Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome is a presynaptic pathology. In myasthenia gravis, antibodies are usually formed against the acetylcholine receptors. In Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, antibodies are formed against the voltage-gated calcium channels. The reflexes are preserved in myasthenia gravis, whereas reflexes are absent or decreased in Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome. ANS symptoms are absent in myasthenia gravis and ANS symptoms are present in Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome. Nerve conduction study shows a decremental response in myasthenia gravis, whereas a nerve conduction study shows incremental response in Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome. This is called as Doyle's sign. Treatment includes anticholinesterases, immunosuppression, plasmapheresis, IVIG for myasthenia gravis. Treatment of Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome is 3,4-diaminopyridine, pyridostigmine, plasmapheresis, and immunosuppression. Thank you.
Can you summarize?
Myasthenia gravis is a autoimmune disorder in which antibodies are formed against the acetylcholine receptors. These antibodies result in decrease of the acetylcholine receptors in the postsynaptic membrane. So the depolarization in the muscle decreases, and this results in weakness.
Okay, that is 85%. And remaining 15%, what antibodies will be present?
Anti-muscle specific kinase antibody.
The other one?
Anti-LPR4 antibodies.
Okay, so 85% you will have.
Have anti-acetylcholine receptor antibodies.
Okay. So next.
Coming to the treatment of clinical features, this is usually associated with fluctuating weakness and fatigability. Facial symptoms such as expressionless faces and snarling expression when attempt to smile, pharyngeal involvement leading to dysphagia, dysarthria, and
Difficulty in swallowing.
difficulty in swallowing, and fatigue on chewing.
Okay.
Muscle involvement, it is usually proximal, and in later stages of the disease, there is respiratory muscle involvement.
And in the major clinical feature, what is the major clinical feature? Weakness, right?
Yes, sir.
And the weakness also, the main classical feature of myasthenia gravis is as the day is passing by. Okay, as the day is passing by, there is increased weakness.
Yes,
At
sir.
the end of the day, there is increased weakness, and it is improved by rest or by medication. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that is a major classical listing. Whereas what happens in Lambert-Eaton syndrome?
On exercise or it improves, the condition improves on
Because
exercise.
more amount of calcium is influxed. So due to that, again the condition has improved in Lambert-Eaton. So on usage, on more usage, the condition improves in Lambert-Eaton.
Lambert, yes.
Myasthenia, repeated usage,
Yes.
even in that shoulder test, what do you do? Abduction and adduction you'll be doing, no, the shoulder. You'll be testing for the weakness. If you do repeatedly, the side on which you have done will have more weakness than the other one. Okay.
Okay.
Whereas in Lambert-Eaton syndrome, if you do repeated usage, what will happen? There will be increase in
Abduction and adduction.
yeah. And what are the general examination you can do in myasthenia gravis? You'll ask the patient to repeatedly blink.
Okay.
When you do the repeatedly, when you ask the patient to repeatedly blink, what will happen? There is increase in ptosis, right?
Yes, sir.
And what are the clinical features? Any other specific clinical features?
Ptosis, diplopia,
Yeah, diplopia,
binocular
will be there, ptosis will be there. These are the ocular manifestations. Other than ocular manifestation, oral also we have talked. Difficulty in mastication, difficulty in swallowing of food and all. And what else?
respiratory muscle involvement.
Respiratory muscle involvement can be there. And in myasthenia crisis, what is happening? Sudden onset of or rapid.
Respiratory, ventilatory weakness, sir.
And in these patients, what is the major treatment that we are going to give? First, we have to secure our airway, breathing, and circulation. We after secure, what will we do for the airway? Either we provide non-invasive ventilation with BiPAP or CPAP. Okay.
Okay.
If non-invasive ventilation is not sufficient, then you will go for invasive ventilation, intubation and ventilation. Okay.
Yes.
And what other therapy you will give in myasthenia crisis? Immunomodulatory therapy. That is nothing but immunotherapy therapy and plasma exchange. Okay.
Yes.
This is the treatment of myasthenia crisis. So to differentiate myasthenia crisis from Lambert-Eaton syndrome, why did we talk about neuromuscular junction?
This is a neuromuscular junction.
Involve the neuromuscular junction. Myasthenia involves pre or postsynaptic?
Myasthenia postsynaptic.
Postsynaptic. And Lambert-Eaton?
Presynaptic.
Presynaptic. Because in Lambert-Eaton, what is happening? Voltage gated
calcium channels, antibodies are formed, sir.
Yeah, Raviteja, you didn't mention about depolarization and repolarization, whereas she has mentioned about the repolarization. When a lot of sodium influx, what is happening? There is depolarization. And, what is the major? Why I'm talking about this voltage gated calcium channel action is because the 3,4. What is the treatment of Lambert-Eaton syndrome? You have told
3,4-diaminopyridine.
What is the function of 3,4-diaminopyridine?
It is a potassium channel blocker, sir, and it increases the depolarization time.
it increases the repolarization. What is happening when depolarization and repolarization are taking place? In between, calcium influx is taking place. Okay, and this calcium influx is necessary for the acetylcholine release, right?
Yes, sir.
So what is happening when you are increasing the repolarization? Means you are stopping the potassium from efflux. So what is happening then? More amount of calcium is coming into the synaptic this thing. So acetylcholine release will be more in the synaptic level. Okay,
Yes, sir.
that is a major function of 3,4.
Diaminopyr.
Okay, and what other treatment you are giving? Myasthenia.
Palidostiquin.
In myasthenia, what is the treatment?
Anticholinesterases.
Anticholinesterases. Pyridostigmine you have talked about. What about neostigmine?
It is also given, sir.
Neostigmine, where else do you give neostigmine? Very common condition. You will see it in all villages and where you find snakes more. What is it? Neostigmine is given in neurotoxic venom of snake bite.
Okay.
Cobra bite is there, no? It is neurotoxic or chemotoxic?
Neurotoxic.
In neurotoxic snake bites, what will happen? You will have the same features. Ptosis, everything will occur. Neostigmine is also given. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Pyridostigmine and neostigmine. But pyridostigmine is longer.
Longer acting drug.
So that is why you have preferred pyridostigmine. But anticholinesterases, there are both pyridostigmine and neostigmine. What are the treatment you are giving? Immunosuppressive therapy. In immunosuppressive therapy, other than steroids, what else will you give?
Mycophenolate mofetils, azathioprine, calcineurin inhibitors.
Mycophenolate mofetil and all you can give. And immunomodulatory we have talked about in myasthenia crisis. In immunomodulatory therapy, what you are giving? Either immunoglobulins, you are giving immunoglobulins or plasma exchange.
Plasma.
In plasma exchange, what are you doing? You are removing the antibodies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. When you are giving anticholinesterases, what is happening in myasthenia gravis? When you are giving pyridostigmine, anticholinesterase.
The acetylcholinesterase cannot cleave the acetylcholine which is present in the neuromuscular junction.
Yeah. In the neuromuscular junction, when impulse is traveling, what will happen? The acetylcholine is getting released. And in order for the acetylcholine to get removed, you need acetylcholine esterase enzyme. So this is blocking the acetylcholine esterase from clearing the acetylcholine. So more amount of acetylcholine is available to
act on the acetylcholine
receptors. As such, the receptors availability is less. So we are making more availability of acetylcholine so that it can have more chance of getting paired with the acetylcholine receptors. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that is the summary of the myasthenia gravis as well as Lambert-Eaton. In Lambert-Eaton, what are we doing? We have talked about already the function of how the voltage gated calcium channels and all. Other than that, what we are giving? Okay, immunosuppressive therapy we are giving. And diagnosis of myasthenia?
Electrodiagnostic testing.
Electrodiagnostic testing. On repeated nerve stimulation, what is happening?
There is decrement response, sir.
The graph comes down. There is decrement of response. Whereas in Lambert-Eaton,
increment, sir. There is increase in response.
Nerve stimulation, increment will be there. Okay, that is another differentiating feature. And what other thing? CT scan and all you spoke about. In what do you see that?
For intracranial lesions.
You look for any thymoma?
Yes, sir. Before operation.
Yeah, even thymectomy, even though there is no abnormality like there is no thymic hyperplasia or there is no thymoma, okay, which is some 65 to 10%. Thymoma is 10% and thymic hyperplasia is 65%, I guess. Okay,
yes,
even though those two abnormalities are not present, there is symptomatic improvement when you go for thymectomy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so remember that if there is symptomatic improvement in myasthenia gravis, if you go for thymectomy. Okay, so thymectomy is another option. And whereas in Lambert-Eaton, in the CT, what you look for? Any small cell carcinoma of the lung, CA lung, any CA lung changes are there, you will look for in the CT. Okay, because it is a what do you call it?
Paraneoplastic.
Okay, paraneoplastic syndrome. means it is associated with any other carcinogenic condition.
Yes.
So that you have to look for. And what are the diagnostic hydrophonium? What does hydrophonium do?
Hydrophonium, it improves the condition in cases of myasthenia gravis, sir.
It improves the muscle weakness.
Muscle.
And why is it chosen? Because very
Shorter duration of action and
and it gets
Ah.
eliminated also quickly from the.
rapid response.
Okay, so good. Both of your presentations were good, and the main pathology is in the neuromuscular junction. One is situated in the postsynaptic, and one is situated in the presynaptic. That's why we spoke about the neuromuscular junction anatomy and physiology. So thank you. Your name is
Ramya, sir.
Ramya. So okay, once again I'll summarize from the beginning. You can stop sharing your screen now.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
just summarize, and then we'll have a 5-minute quiz. We'll see who retained how much. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, to summarize, first the neuromuscular junction. We are coming to the neuromuscular junction. In the neuromuscular junction, what is happening at the terminal part of the axon? This acetylcholine is getting released into what? The synaptic space. Okay, the synaptic space. What is it called? What is it called? Can you tell, Ramya?
Sir,
Can you tell what is the synaptic space called? The space between the muscle and the axon terminal?
neuromuscular junction.
No. There's a specific name to it. Raviteja, you can tell?
Synaptic cleft.
Yeah, the synaptic cleft. And what is happening? This acetylcholine is getting released into the synaptic cleft. Okay, there it goes and bonds with the acetylcholine receptors, and then the muscle contraction takes place. Okay, this is mediated by again voltage gated calcium channels and all. Okay, and this acetylcholine released into the synaptic cleft. To remove it, in order to remove it, acetylcholine esterase enzymes are required to clear the acetylcholine from this. This is the basic, in brief, a nutshell of the neuromuscular junction. And in myasthenia gravis, what is happening? There is antibodies developing for the acetylcholine receptors. These antibodies, even they activate the complement system, and during the activation of the complement system, the acetylcholine receptors are further destroyed. Okay, and what are responsible for the maintenance of the acetylcholine receptors? Muscle specific kinase and
Muscle specific. LPR4.
yeah, these are responsible. So if in 85% of the cases, antibodies to acetylcholine receptors are present. Okay, if not, you have to check for, if that is negative, you have to check for anti-MuSK and
LPR4.
LPR4 antibodies. Okay, this is in the myasthenia gravis, and the symptoms we have talked about starting from eye
Ocular.
symptoms. Ptosis will be there, diplopia will be there, difficulty in mastication, difficulty in swallowing, and when you talk more, weakness will be there, and jaw opening also. There will be difficulty in jaw opening will be there, and respiratory failure can occur due to respiratory weakness. Okay, and proximal muscle weakness will be there. Okay, these are the features of myasthenia gravis. And classically, what will happen through the day, as the day passes, the weakness increases. Okay, and it improves by rest and by medication. And the diagnosis part also we have discussed imaging techniques to rule out thymoma or anything. And what else? Hydrophonium test, muscle nerve stimulation test,
Nerve stimulation.
nerve stimulation test. What is happening? As you do it repeatedly, the graph comes down. Okay, and the first and foremost antibody testing. Okay, and coming to treatment part, we have talked about the treatment part also. Anticholinesterase medication like pyridostigmine or neostigmine, and immunosuppressive therapy like steroid therapy, azathioprine, or what else? Mycophenolate mofetil, and immunomodulatory therapy like plasmapheresis, as well as
IVIG.
immunoglobulins. Then coming to Lambert-Eaton, it is not postsynaptic, it is presynaptic. In that calcium channel, the antibodies are developing due to
Voltage gated calcium.
calcium channels. So okay, so what you will do in this? What is happening? Due to that, there is less release of acetylcholine. So again, there is there is weakness present. and this weakness is overcome by increased repetitive motion or repetitive usage, because more amount of calcium influx takes place when you do repeated usage. Okay, so it is the reverse. Myasthenia on usage, weakness is increasing. In Lambert-Eaton on usage, weakness is improving. Okay, and this is postsynaptic. Myasthenia is postsynaptic, and Lambert-Eaton is presynaptic. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And the treatment part in this, what is the treatment part?
Yes, sir.
The same. Yeah. Can you summarize the treatment part quickly? We'll finish up the session.
Anticholinesterases are given.
Okay.
Thymectomy is done.
Hmm.
Immunosuppressive drugs like glucocorticoids, mycophenolate mofetil,
That is for myasthenia. I am talking about Lambert-Eaton.
3,4-diaminopyridine,
Yeah.
pyridostigmine, plasmapheresis, and immunotherapy.
No. There is a recent study whether there is, we are giving pyridostigmine even in this, in myasthenia as well as here, right? They have tried a combination therapy. Okay, and they have tried individual therapy with pyridostigmine. The same patient, Lambert-Eaton, many cases were taking, and they were divided. In one set of group, they have given only 3,4
Diaminopyridine.
diaminopyridine. Okay, and in one set of patients, pyridostigmine was given, and in one set of patients, combination therapy was given. In compared to all three studies, what is the outcome is, the patients who have been given only single drug therapy with 3,4 dihydropyridine, and the patients who have been given combination therapy, if you compare and see, the single therapy was better. Okay, there is no much change. Whereas in pyridostigmine, the effect was comparatively less. So the choice of drug and the choice of mainstay for the treatment of Lambert-Eaton is 3,4 diaminopyridine. Okay. So roll number 130. 130. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you summarize the treatment part of Lambert-Eaton? The presentation was done very good by Ravi Teja and Ramya. The point of this seminar is that you all have to retain some knowledge so that you can attempt and write at least 4 to 5 good points. Can you summarize the treatment or not? Uh, 130. 020. Can you summarize the treatment part? Zero to 055. 055. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you summarize the treatment part for Lambert-Eaton?
3,4-diaminopyridine,
Okay.
pyridostigmine,
Good.
plasmapheresis.
Okay. 065. 065. Can you hear me? 065. 075. 075. Can you hear me? Okay. Many of them are not responding. Okay, I'm concluding the session for today. I hope you have understood and retained some knowledge of the neuromuscular junction as well as the two disorders, pre and postsynaptic disorders, that is Lambert-Eaton and myasthenia gravis. Okay, thank you.